Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Introduction to ArcGIS Pro. I'm Janet Reyes, the Geospatial Information Librarian. Happy to spend the next hour or so with you, filling you in on some of the basic things you should know about this pretty complex software. We're just going to take an easy look at some of the basic features of it, and that will help get you acquainted with it as you explore it further after today. If you have registered for this workshop and I have a valid email address for you, you'll be getting a copy of the slides. The slides will have links that will be useful to you. And also, if you have registered for this workshop, I'll also be sending you a link to where you'll be able to find the recording of this workshop on the library's YouTube channel. So that'll be another way for you to kind of review what we go over today and maybe practice along on your own. This workshop today is not really designed for people to be following along as we go. I figured I could get more information in if we just presented as much as we could, and then people could practice on their own time later on. So a couple of other housekeeping items. I have an assistant today. Her name is Jeanette, and she'll be helping me by pasting things into the chat and also monitoring the chat, letting me know if there's something I should be answering or whatever. So thank you, Jeanette, for helping me out today. One of the links she'll be putting into the chat toward the end of today's workshop is a link to a survey. Takes just a couple minutes at most, and it'll just be really helpful for me and the rest of the library to understand if we're hitting the mark when we give these workshops or if there's something that could be better. So if you can take a minute to do that at the end, I'd greatly appreciate that. I think that's all the housekeeping things I have, so let's go ahead and get started. With the UCR land acknowledgement, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Museño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous peoples from all over the world, including UCR faculty, students, and staff, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. So here's what we'll cover today. Just some real basics about GIS, in case you're not familiar with it already. We'll take a look at ArcGIS products and how ArcGIS Pro fits in among all of them. A little boring segment for sure will be the data management terms, but I think it's important for you to get exposure to at least some of those terms. And then we'll actually look at how you get started with ArcGIS Pro, especially at UCR. There's a certain pathway you go through to get to it. The next three portions of the workshop will actually be a live demo if all goes well. I've got it queued up to show you how to use selection, symbology and labeling, and then making a scene, which in this case means making a three-dimensional scene out of mapped data. Then at the end, we'll flip back to the slides and go over a little bit about tools and also editing. And then finally, there's a couple of slides that have links to many more tutorials that will give you, again, some opportunities to learn more at your own pace. So let's look at GIS fundamentals. A definition of a GIS, there's lots of them out there. This one stands up pretty well, even though it's a little bit old now. But a geographic information system, or GIS, is a system designed to do all of those things that you see in bold on this slide, and with spatial or geographic data. And the good news is, to effectively use ArcGIS Pro or any GIS, you don't have to be an expert in all of these aspects of a GIS to use it successfully. You can just understand a little bit of some of these things and just focus on being the user and using GIS to analyze or manage your data, present it, whatever. So anyway, don't get too intimidated by seeing all those words which imply a lot of background knowledge. I next want to talk about the two basic types of data that you'll find in a GIS. The first type is called raster data. We are all pretty much familiar with this from everyday life. If we have any screens or if we have digital images, we know that they are composed of pixels, right? And pixels are in a regular grid. They are all the same size and all pixels have a value. Now, in a GIS, raster data is used both for images, like images of the ground or images of maps, maybe that were printed before, but it can also be used for any type of data where you want to have understanding of how this feature varies continuously over the landscape. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we have an image of a digital elevation model, or DEM. And in this case, the values for each raster maybe correspond to the height above sea level, right? So that's a good way to capture the continuous variation of that across the landscape. Other types of uses of raster in this way would be anything collected from a sensor, maybe from a satellite or something, regarding maybe ground temperature or concentration of methane gas or something like that in the atmosphere. So anyway, that's one way rasters are used. On the right-hand side, you see an image that has been, information has been extracted from that image based on the gray tone scale of what's on the image. So you can see that they've figured out that the very dark area is shaded in blue, so that would be water, and so forth and so on. So that just gives you some ideas of how raster data can be used in a GIS. But what we'll be using today, and what most people use these days, is called vector data. And vector data simulates what a person would be doing if they were just drawing a map by hand. They would not create this raster grid and fill in just the squares that they needed. They would just go ahead and put a point or an X where they wanted a point, draw a line and so forth. And then polygons are another way to talk about areas or shapes. So that might be something like a county boundary, an area that's been burned by a wildfire, whatever takes up a couple of different dimensions on the landscape. So that's the idea behind vector data and points, lines, and polygons. And the cool thing about vector data in a GIS is that sitting behind it is what we call an attribute table. So an attribute table contains characteristics of the mapped features. This slide is an example of data from our campus map, or at least our campus map from a few years ago, where we have a layer of polygons that represent the parking lots. And so you can see a couple of the parking lots highlighted on the map, and then the same, the rows that correspond to those parking lots are highlighted in the attribute table. You can see that every row in the attribute table represents a different feature on the map, and then every column or field in the attribute table gives a different type of information about that feature. And you can see from this example that it could be numeric, it could be alphanumeric, it could be blank, it could be a URL, it could be any type of date timestamp or something like that. So you could have lots of different types of information in your attribute table. They are linked, the table and the map are linked by an ID number that they share in common. And with a GIS, one of the things that makes it so powerful is that you can display or analyze data based on whatever column or columns in the attribute table that you want. So that's what gives it a lot more power than just a printed map, for instance. So now I'll go and talk about ArcGIS products and where ArcGIS Pro fits in among all of them. If you're not familiar with it already, ArcGIS is a mapping and analytics platform created by a company called Esri, which is headquartered just 15 miles northeast of UCR's campus in Redlands, California. There's a long history between the two, going back to the early days of Esri. But now it has grown to be the market leader worldwide. I think more people use Esri products or ArcGIS products in using GIS than any other application out there. So it's quite impressive how much they've grown over time. And the next slide will show you the whole suite of Esri products. I got this from their website, and every time I give a workshop and I go back, it's changed and grown and modified. So they're quite busy doing lots of things with lots of their products. You see the red arrows pointing to where ArcGIS Pro and its extensions sit in this suite of products. Today, I'm going to talk briefly about the first one on the top of here. It's called ArcGIS Online, I'm going to talk about another product that we're not seeing here. And then, of course, most of the workshop will be focused on ArcGIS Pro. So here's what ArcGIS Online looks like. As the name implies, it is based in the cloud. So the good thing about using it is you don't need to install it on your computer. You can, as long as you have internet access, you can go ahead and make maps and analyze the data on them. It's a little bit less sophisticated than the desktop version of ArcGIS. So it can't do everything, but they're adding functionality to it all the time. So I'm thinking eventually it might almost become as robust as what we do on the desktop. You can see we have panes or toolbar kind of things on either side. It's pretty clean looking. So yeah, that's what ArcGIS Online is, and since it is a little bit easier to use, sometimes people recommend that new learners to GIS start off with ArcGIS Online and get the hang of it before they dive into something that's a little more sophisticated. Here's ArcGIS Pro. This is what we're going to be looking at today. You can see there is a set of ribbons across the top, very much like a Microsoft product. So each of these ribbons has a different set of tools that you can use. On the left-hand side, we have what's called the contents pane that shows you what layers have been loaded into the map that you're looking at right now. The map pane is what's in the middle. You can see these little tabs. So unlike a predecessor of ArcGIS Pro, you can have more than one map or scene available within what you're working on. On the right-hand side, we have the catalog pane, which helps you manage the data that's going into your map or your project. And also on the right-hand side is where you'll see other panes appear if you're doing some analysis work or if you want to change the appearance of the map, things like that. But here's the third product I needed to talk about today, ArcMap. I don't know if any of you are familiar with ArcMap or have used it. There's a reason why, but we're not talking too much about ArcMap today. We'll get to that more on the next slide. But this has been in use for more than 20 years. And you can see instead of those ribbons, we have what are called toolbars at the top. And there's many other differences between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro. And here's a slide that talks a little bit about the contrast between them. So Pro was released in 2015, whereas ArcMap, I think it was the early 2000s when it was released. ArcGIS Pro is taking the place of ArcMap, whether we like it or not. Some people don't like it at all, in fact. But anyway, it's happening, whereas ArcMap is now in mature support, and it will be entirely gone by March 2026, which is just a little under 2 years from now. If you were going to install ArcGIS Pro on your computer, and especially if you have maybe a computer that's not so robust, you might want to check the minimum system requirements for Pro to make sure that Pro can be run well on the computer you have. Whereas ArcMap, since it's kind of on the old side, it will run on most Windows computers. I have an asterisk there. Both of these products are designed for Windows machines. They are challenging to run on a Mac. You can do it, but I've been told to be prepared for lots of lags and maybe crashes and things like that. So it's maybe one of the drawbacks of using ArcGIS products, but they are designed just for Windows computers. So if you are at UCR, an affiliate, there are a few different ways you can get access to ArcGIS Pro. It is available on our new virtual lab machines that are called Itopia. It is also available physically installed in machines in the STAR lab in Orbach Science Library on the first floor. Also in Watkins 2111 and 2117, the computer labs there, they have ArcGIS Pro installed. If you want to install it on your own machine at UCR, you don't have to go through ITS. All you have to do really is first create an ArcGIS Online account, and then there's a way, once you're in an ArcGIS Online account, to navigate to where you can download an installer for ArcGIS Pro. So, like I said, on the right-hand side here, ArcMap is not going to be available at UCR much longer, but it is currently on Itopia if you needed it. ITS is not issuing any new licenses to new users of ArcMap. You can only get a renewal if you've already been using it. So anyway, those are the contrasts between what's going on with ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap. Now we'll get into the boring part. I never enjoy this too much, but I think all these data management terms will be useful to you as you start diving in. A lot of them sound very much similar to each other, and I just need to make some distinctions between them so you kind of have an idea of what's going on with them. And again, if you've registered for this workshop, you'll have a copy of the slides and you can maybe dive back into what some of these terms mean as they become important to you to know what they mean. And my clever way of showing what terms you need to focus on versus the ones that are nice to know about but not crucial is that I've kind of faded out the font on the ones that are less important for the moment. So on this slide, we're going to focus on what a project is. A project is just a collection of related items. In ArcGIS Pro, when you first open it up and you say, I'm going to make a map, they're going to say, okay, this is a project. What are you going to call this project? So once you commit to making a map, it's going to be stored in what's called a project. Other files can also be in the project, as well as all the connections to the folders and things that you have used to make those files and maps. The project package, I just want you to know if you needed to share your work to somebody else, or maybe you need to share it with yourself if you're using a machine that you don't have continual access to, the way you get to package that out and enable somebody else or yourself to open it up again later is to export it as a project package. This slide, we talk about geodatabase and feature class. So a geodatabase is also created when you first create a project in ArcGIS Pro. It's just a container for all the data sets that you've got going on of various types. As you see here, it's kind of symbolized by this little canister. And within your geodatabase, you can have multiple layers of, in this case, these are all polygon layers, but you could also have what are called feature classes of lines or points. But basically, any layer that you have that has information consistent within itself, you'll have a separate feature class for it. So for instance, we wouldn't have a feature class, even though they're both polygons, we wouldn't have one that can contain water bodies and county boundaries or something. You know, it would just be one or the other. And then you can see that there's other types of data or features that you can have within a geodatabase. Now, shape files and layers. A shape file is what you're going to see if somebody is sharing a feature class with you, basically. It's a very popular vector data format, and it translates into a feature class once you've loaded it into a GIS. And one tricky thing about shape files is that they're probably going to come to you as a zip file. And if you open up the zip file, you're going to see lots of other files, including one that looks like that should be the shape file, right? I don't know what all these other ones are, but it turns out to have the shape file appear on your map in the correct way, you're going to need all of those files. So trust me, you don't just need the one that's .shp. Within the folder, you need all of them. A layer is what we call a feature class after it's loaded into a GIS. So to me, like layer, shapefile, feature class, they're all kind of the same thing, but it's just like a phase difference, like ice is different from water, right? It just depends on where this stuff is in your process. We refer to it as different things. And again, on this slide, I've got it faded out, but a layer file and a layer package, those are ways that you can share either some or all of the information about a particular layer with somebody else to export and load into their own system. And the last slide on data management, what you need to know about mostly is the catalog pane. You'll find it on the View tab. And it also pops up almost automatically these days when you first open ArcGIS Pro, a map in ArcGIS Pro. This is where you can make connections to folders that may have your data if it's not already showing up in your catalog. This is also where you would create a new geodatabase other than the one that was that came up automatically when you started a project. You can also add feature classes A feature data set is like kind of a collection of feature classes, kind of a sub intermediate folder in between a geodatabase and the feature class itself. Yeah, you can search for items by typing keywords in the catalog pane, and often you can find something in the catalog pane and drag it to your map and load it in that way. I just wanted to mention that there's this other thing called catalog view. Most of us, probably especially those starting out, will not need to use catalog view very much, but since it sounds so similar to catalog pane, I just wanted to point out that it exists, but they're different. Okay, getting started with ArcGIS Pro. I'm going to take a quick sip of water and I'll just wait to see if there's any questions anybody wants to ask at this time. Okay, we'll keep going. So at UCR, this is specific to what happens at UCR. If you are listening to this and you're from a different institution, the process will be different, of course. Oh, I do see somebody has his hand raised. Would you like to unmute?
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Vaishnavi, and I have a quick question, Janet. So, I just want to know if I can use the shapefile, that is .shp file, with any other, compiler, or, with any other language apart from just ArcGIS.
Yes, that's a good question. And it is, shapefiles are pretty standard. So for instance, one of the main, I guess, competitors, you'd say, of ArcGIS Pro is QGIS, which is an open source software that also uses shapefiles as an intake. And then other features as well, other types of platforms use shapefiles as well. If you're using Google Earth at all, that data comes in a different type of file called a KML or KMZ. But the good news is that you can transfer or change a KML into a shapefile and vice versa. So that's not a barrier to switching off between Google Earth and ArcGIS Pro either. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, so there's like 4 or 5 different iterations you need to go before you open ArcGIS Pro here at UCR. If you open it up and you see this window at the top, what you want to do is click your ArcGIS organization's URL as your starting choice. Not the sign in button, but that one. And then when you click that, the next little window you get, it gives you an opportunity to fill in the start of the URL for your organization. And for us at UCR, we just type in UCR, and that completes the URL. And then we would click continue. Then you get to push the big blue UCR button. And then after that, you get to do the net ID and password thing where you get to authenticate as being an affiliate of UCR. And finally, that gets you into ArcGIS Pro. Okay, when you open up ArcGIS Pro, you're going to see this landing page. And then if you want to get started with the map, under New Project, you would go ahead and click Map. And like I said before, as soon as you do that, you'll be prompted to name this project. So you have to have a name in mind first, might be helpful before you get going. Then once you're in ArcGIS Pro, once you've opened it, you'll probably just see a map of the world, all zoomed out. And that's nice, but you probably want to work with some data, right? So you need to add data to this map. The way you do it is go on the top to the map ribbon. Then over here, there's, it might not look quite this big on your screen. Like when I use my little laptop, it doesn't look this big, but this icon is add data. There's a drop down for different choices on how you're going to add data. And if you've got something stored locally, you can just click the first one, data, and then navigate in the window that appears, navigate to the folder containing your data, click on the files you want to add, and then click OK. Now, what you're going to see in this workshop are feature classes I have added from a geodatabase that is shared on the Riverside County website. This is countywide static data is what it's called. And what I've done is pull out one feature class that's a line, which is false, a feature class that is points, which is public sites, and then guess what? A feature class that is polygons, and that's watersheds. So once you have loaded in your data, whatever it's going to be, you can also be on that same tab. And if your cursor isn't letting you pan around or zoom in or something for some reason, you can always do this. You can hit this explore button, and that will enable your cursor to do the things you want to do just to navigate around your map. Should do that by default, but I just wanted to let you know if your cursor is being weird, just go back to explore, and that will get you going again. I need to mention in the contents pane, drawing order. This is the default view of the contents you have. And what drawing order means is that whatever's first on the list is going to cover up the things that are further down on the list, kind of like you're looking at a top-down view. So when I cut to the live demo, we're going to see that I have watersheds at the top of the list, and that's not very helpful. So I'm going to be able to just drag and drop it down to the bottom where it's now not going to be covering up the other things I have in my scene, in my map. And this is another slide. I wasn't sure whether to include all this information or not, but ArcGIS Pro comes in with a default base map, and it's a very nice one, but maybe you want to use something else in the background of your mapping. Maybe you want to have aerial imagery. Maybe you want to have something that's very basic, like just the country outlines and not much more. Maybe you want to emphasize the terrain. So Esri provides a whole bunch of base maps to choose from, and you can switch from one to the other. The way you do that is find the layer group in the map tab and find this like four square symbol that gives you a choice of base maps. Now, sometimes, and this happened to me a while ago, well, when I was first getting used to ArcGIS Pro, I wasn't seeing any choices here. And so I'm just including this. If that happens to you, this is the sequence of things that you could do to make sure that you'll see your base map choices. Otherwise, if you're lucky, and most of the time I believe this will work, is that you will already see those base map choices when you get going. Okay, we're gonna get going pretty soon here with the demo part. Looking at my time, this is pretty good. Okay, selection. So what does selection do? Well, first of all, it's signified by that bright aqua color. And when you select a feature on your map, you can edit those features, either their location, their shape, or what their attributes are. You can assess the attributes of the selected features only, or you can see which features have particular attributes. And we're going to take a look at how all that works. So if we're lucky, I am now going to stop sharing my slides and get over to my instance of ArcGIS Pro. So like I said, I have made sure that the watersheds were on top of my drawing order just to show you that it's covering up everything, but I can just go ahead and pull it down underneath my faults. And now I'm getting to see all those layers, right? So that's the significance of drawing order. Let me zoom in here. And what I can do is get to, yeah, I'm back on the map tab now, and I'm going to use this tool to select features by rectangle. So maybe I just want to select some of these public sites. Maybe I want these guys. And you'll see what happens is those sites that I lassoed in that rectangle turned aqua to indicate that they've been selected, but I've also got some other stuff in the background selected as well. What I'm going to do now is, instead of being on drawing order, I'm going to go over here to list by selection. And what this is going to show me is that, yes, I have 8 of those points for public sites selected, but I also have the watersheds in the background selected. And sometimes you just don't want that, right? I mean, this little symbol allows me to clear the selection. That same symbol is also up here in the ribbon, but I can clear it and then just go ahead and do what I want to do with the public sites. But if this is going to be annoying for you as you work with multiple layers, what you can do is just on this list by selection tab of the contents pane, you can uncheck what you don't want to select at the moment. And now if I clear my selection here and try that again, now I'm only getting the public sites selected. So that's a good thing to know. Just remember to toggle this back on if later it's going to be important for you to select your watersheds, for instance. So now what I'm going to do is clear this selection. And maybe I'll just get these 2 guys. What I can do now is right-click on the public sites that have these points selected. If I right-click, I get a whole list of possibilities of what I can do. And I'm going to pick attribute table because I want to show you attribute table that's behind all of this. So this is created by the County of Riverside, right? And I happen to know that these 2 points are in the way down on the attribute table in the 300s. There's one, and there's the other. So that tells me that those are the attributes of those 2 points that I selected. At the bottom of this attribute table, you can see it tells me that 2 out of 572 things have been selected. But this icon is also useful to know. If I didn't want to have to scroll through my attribute table to see which things are selected, I can switch the view of the attribute table just to show me the records that are selected, and then that makes it much easier, right? I didn't have to scroll in the first place. Another way that you can check the attributes of selected features is there is a tool up here called attributes. And this makes it a lot easier, honestly. Here are the 2 fire stations that I have selected. If I click on this name, it flashes the one that it corresponds to on the map. And it also changes the attributes down here in this more, maybe easier to read tabular form. So that's one way that you can investigate the attributes of what you have selected on the map. Next, I'm going to use the select by attributes and select by location features or functions. And what I want to do first is use select by attributes to identify all the public sites that are hospitals. So I'm going to clear my previous selection. I'm going to come to select by attributes. And it's already on public sites. Notice they call it input rows. I mean, I don't know why they don't call it layer or feature class, but now they're calling it input rows. So you get to pick whichever layer or feature class you have that you would like to get the information from. I want a new selection, that's fine, but there's also other options there. And this part's a little maybe confusing, especially for newcomers, but what we want to do is create a clause that tells us which of these public sites we want to select. So I'm going to add a new clause. And I'm going to go where, and then it says select a field. So I happen to know that things are called, whether they're fire stations or hospitals or, government buildings or something, that's all identified in a column of the attribute table that's titled site type. So that's what I'm going to pick. Then it tries to fill in the rest of the expression. Is equal to is fine with me because I want to get the hospitals, right? So here, this is going to populate with all the things that have been used at least once in that column as site type. So here, they're alphabetical in order. So I'm going to pick hospital. And that's all I want. So I'm going to go OK. failed to execute. I wonder why. That is different. That's the first time this has happened to me, folks. But what should have happened is it would have picked 19 of the points that were hospitals. Yeah, and then the next thing that I was going to do was going to go to select by location. And I was going to have the public sites that were already selected. I was going to see which ones were close to fault lines, because I think that is kind of useful information to know whether something is close to a fault line or not. So what I would do is the public sites that were already selected, I would then, instead of intersect, I would go within a distance. And I would, within a distance of what? And I would go to faults. And I was going to set it up for maybe just one statute mile and make that a subset of the current selection. And then apply that, and you would, if it had worked the first time, you would have seen that the points that were remaining that were lit up were the ones that were hospitals that were super close to fault lines. So I apologize, I'm not sure why it's being cranky right now, but that's how you have it. In the slides that you'll be getting, I do have the slides illustrating what the steps are and how it works properly. So apologies for this. But we will just keep moving on. What I want to do now is work on changing the symbology and labeling of the watersheds. So what I'm going to do is go back now over to drawing order. The way you can change the symbology or what this looks like, because you're probably not going to like the way it looks when it's first loaded in. This is not what I want to see. What I'd like to see, be able to see, is through to the base map. And yeah, right now I can't do that because this is all kind of this light violet color. So anytime you want to change the symbology or the way the point or the line or the polygon looks, is just click on the symbol that you see over here in drawing order. And that pops up this format polygon symbol window or pane. It's on properties already. Sometimes it'll show up first as gallery, but what you can do is just toggle it over here to properties. And I do like having it here on the symbol sub tab, I guess. So for appearance, since I want this hollow, what I'm going to do is click on the arrow here next to color. And I'm going to choose no color because I really don't want it filled in with anything. For the outline color, I'm going to change it to like a bright blue. And I want to make, now you're seeing down here at the bottom, you're seeing kind of a preview of what it's going to look like. I want my outlines to be a little bit thicker than that, so I'm going to go up to 2 point for that, and now you're seeing a preview. I also wanted to mention here that sometimes in these panes, you might not realize it, but there are these little divider things that you can pull down and maybe reveal more of the choices that you have in there. You can also get there by doing this side scrolly thing, but sometimes this can really throw you off if you're expecting to see some function or some setting and it's not showing up. So just remember to look for this and pull it down if you think there's more there. Anyway, nothing has changed on my map yet, has it? But I'm going to click apply now. And it worked. How about that? So at least that part worked. And we now have watershed boundaries that I can see, and I can see through to the map. I mentioned labeling, and what we can do is also label these watersheds with the name that they have in the attribute table. To do that, I'm going to pull down my my Pro session here a little bit so I can see this context tab. It's one thing I didn't mention before. In addition to all the standard ribbons or tabs that we have up here, if you have something highlighted in the contents pane, there's these extra contextual tabs that will pop up. So now I have the option for labeling. So I'm going to click this tab. I've played around with this a little bit, so it's already set to kind of what I want, but I'll walk you through it. Over here in the label class section of this tab, you want to make sure this checkbox is checked. For the field, remember this is the column heading that you want to have to draw your labels from. I really don't want acres or anything else. Watershed name is what I want, so that's what I've selected. Over here in the text symbol is where you get to set which font you want, what font size you want, whether it's regular or bold, what color it is. You can do all that. They also have some preset, font that you might want to explore as well. But for our purposes right here, let's just go with this one. And you see I've done all these things and I still don't have labels on the map. So what else do you have to do, right? I think this is a little sneaky of them, but all the way over here on the left-hand side, this thing means enable labeling. So you're not going to see your labels unless you've toggled this on. And now we see our labels. And as I zoom in, you see the size, the relative size of the label is changing. There are settings that you can use to, modify that if you want. But anyway, that gives you an idea of some of the things you can do with symbology and labeling. The last thing I wanted to do is show you how to make that scene, right? And we'll see if ArcGIS Pro cooperates with me on this. I already kind of preset it up. But what I need to do is first show you how to go about that. So adding the scene to my project, I would go to the Insert tab. And, honestly, I spent a little bit of time looking around. Well, where does it let me to insert a scene? I see New Map over here. And it turns out that's what you need to do. You need to click the drop down next to New Map. And then that lets you, in this case, we want a new local scene. So that's what I chose in order to create this. You can see I've loaded in the watersheds. I had to do it separately. It doesn't just automatically come from the map that you had. Another way to add your data, other than going back up to here and navigating to your folder again, is sometimes it's convenient if you open up your catalog and I have it on the computer tab here. Here's the database I downloaded from the county. So what I did was you can just drag and drop the watersheds, which is way at the bottom here, over into the map, and that works as well. But yeah, so here, at the moment, it looks like a two-dimensional map, right? But what I'm going to do is hold down on my mouse wheel and then push, and then I get to turn it so it ends up looking like a three-dimensional thing. I think as I do this, you can get the idea that a watershed boundary pretty much follows the ridge lines. It's the whole concept of a drop of water falling and which way is it going to roll, which river is it or stream is it going to flow into. You can see the shape of a line changing. It's just because this takes a lot of graphics capability. It gets, again, a little cranky. It takes a little while to draw up sometimes the way you want it. But yeah, we can flip this around. We can zoom in. You see this down here at the bottom, this is called the on-screen navigator. And this is another way to navigate your scene if your mouse is not doing it for you or you don't have a mouse. And then this navigator can also be toggled to one that has even more control. And you can do some of the same things I was doing with the mouse by using this even more robust navigator. So yeah, if you want to explore your data in 3D, this is a very nice feature that ArcGIS Pro has. So with that, I am going to go back to my slides and talk a little bit more about some of the other things, starting with tools. So analysis is a big part of why people want to use ArcGIS Pro. And you'll find tools in the analysis toolbar, appropriately enough. You'll see a big red toolbox. That's the one that contains all the tools. When you click that toolbox, you get a geoprocessing pane that shows up on the right-hand side. And you can go to the toolboxes sub-tab there. And there are kind of sub toolboxes that talk to you about spatial analysts versus statistics. You can open up those toolboxes. You can open up, sub versions of the toolbox and find the individual tools. You can also search for the tools by typing a few, words or a phrase about what you're looking to do. Whether the tool is actually named that or not, sometimes it's smart enough to figure out what you're looking for, even if it's not the exact name of the tool. And if you have any questions about what the tool does, if you just hover over it, you get a little tip about what that is. And of course, there is help available where there's quite a bit of extensive documentation about each of these tools on the Esri website. And then in my time at UCR, I have not had too many people who are interested in actually creating a map by drawing it, maybe by interpreting aerial photography within the GIS and extracting features. But if that describes you, I just wanted to show you that what you need to become acquainted with in ArcGIS Pro is the edit ribbon. This enables you to create features like drawing points, lines, or polygons. You can modify them, either move them or reshape them or split them or all kinds of things like that. But to do that, if you're going to modify anything, it has to be selected first. So that's something good to know, and something if you're a little nervous about, I'm afraid I'm going to delete something by accident. Know that at least you have to have it selected first before you can do anything to it. So anyway, if you're going to be making maps, the edit ribbon will be one of your friends. Okay, tutorials. If you have ArcGIS Pro 3.2 loaded on your machine, or if that's what's available to you, they now have this learning resources little section of that landing page on the home page at upper right. And when you click on that, it takes you to a lot of quick start tutorials, some information from a blog, or Esri community is like a question and answer kind of thing. More tutorials, as you see. And for those of you who are coming from ArcMap and you have to learn ArcGIS Pro now, they have helpfully put some tools or guidance here on this homepage of Pro for you to refer to and get used to the differences and get up to speed with Pro. These next two slides, this slide and the next slide, just have some links to some of those quick start tutorials that we just saw, but there's additional ones as well. I think they're nicely done. They don't take a lot of time. Esri provides the data for you to load in, and it's all in the service of, kind of following like a real life situation. Like you might really have to do this when you're using a GIS. So here's how we share a web map, that kind of thing. So I think it's really nicely done. These are some more learning resources from Esri. Again, some of the things that we just looked at may be repeated in these two locations, but there's just a wealth of information to help you along. And that is it. We have a little bit of time left. If there's any questions or anything you would like to have me review. But I thank you so much for your attention today. I think you saw the link to the survey in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and just do that at some point, you get to choose one of the 3 questions that are there and just answer the one that you chose. And that's all you have to do. So I'll just advance to the last slide here, which has my contact information. You're certainly welcome to reach out to me with further questions you might have. And like I said, the recording is going to be available on the library's YouTube channel in a week, maybe. I have to edit the captions and all that, so we'll see how much time that takes me. But yeah, I thank you so much for your attention today, and happy to take any further questions. Yeah.
Can you use a graphics tablet with the editing tool, like to draw on the map, like a Wacom or any of that? I'm not sure if you know.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with that.
Okay.
But
I'm just curious.
yeah. Oh, the question was whether I could use certain other like annotation tools. Is that it, Alvaro?
Oh yeah, like an art tablet, yeah, a graphics tablet, like on the editing tool you showed us. You said not too many people use that tool to draw on the maps. I guess is that what you mentioned?
Yeah, that would be the editing toolbar is for people who are actually creating data in the GIS, not so much annotation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'm not sure that it has that capability, to be honest.
Okay. Oh, maybe I missed. Yeah, I thought it was that's what. Oh, okay.
But thanks for the question. Is there any other questions out there from folks in Zoom? Taking a look. Okay, I see some questions now. Is it possible to work offline in ArcGIS Pro? Yes, it is. You don't have to be connected to do some things, but I do find there's a lot that it ends up it is helpful, especially if you need to bring in data from some other part of the Esri world. It helps to be connected. Oh, I see a hand from Tiara. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you. In terms of the labeling, when you said it was kind of sneaky, you can't insert a label just from that label tab. You have to go to the corner where it was like kind of like hidden on the left-hand side and then add a label. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can set up the labels doing all the other things I did up to that point. And it's interesting to me that they don't automatically populate on the map. You have to go over to that. Remember to do that last thing, which is click the label icon on the very far left
Okay.
of that toolbar. And
Okay.
the thing that's also tricky is like it doesn't change, that icon doesn't change its appearance once you have it toggled on or off. So you can't look at it and understand whether it's toggled or not. So yeah, I would hope that they would do something like that to make it obvious, but so far they haven't. So I'm reading Lynn's question now.
And I'm happy to rephrase it if you like.
Okay.
I was wondering if you were having trouble with the select by attribute. If you had, I didn't see if you typed in the word hospital. I wasn't sure if it was a drop down or not. And then I was wondering if you can type things in, can you make it not care about capital letters?
I haven't experimented with typing it in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it's usually just something you can pick from the drop-down list.
Okay.
And it'll populate that window. So yeah.
Okay. Maybe more like a definition query, I think maybe. Anyway, I'll experiment. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. If there's nothing else, I thank you again for your attention today. I hope this was helpful in some way. And yeah, Have a good rest of your day. Oh, Tiara has another question. Go ahead, Tiara.
Sorry, one more question.
No
If
problem.
you don't have access to ArcGIS Pro, because I'm not a student anymore, I currently just graduated at UCSB. I'm just trying to like learn GIS for a job.
Yeah.
Can you just go ahead and work on ArcGIS Pro online?
Well, that ArcGIS Online is a different system, so there's some similarities, but it's really not the same as what we just looked at. I believe that Esri allows people to make a public account. So even if they're not affiliated with a company that uses ArcGIS Pro or an institution that offers it, I think you are able to make a public account, like those tutorials, for instance. I think you could use some of, if you go to the beginning of those, I believe it tells you how to create a public account there, and then you can at least work through the tutorials. I'm not 100% sure of that, but that's what I think I remember. So you can explore that, and hopefully that'll work for you. Or if there's like a library that you can access, you know, nearby, maybe another institution that has a couple public-facing computers that have GIS installed, you might get lucky that way. Something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mel's asking, can ArcGIS Pro do auto-saving, or do you have to do it manually? Great question. I should have covered that in the workshop, to be honest. It does not auto-save. So probably as you're working along, every 10 or 15 minutes, you might want to do that you might want to save your project and make sure that you're not going to lose anything that crashes. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and stop now. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and look forward to interacting with you again sometime, perhaps. Thank you.